Praise God. This is the third message in a series of 4 that I am presenting to you on how to love the unlovable. We've talked about those people who are unlovable to us because they offend us. We talk about those people who are unlovable to us because we have judged them. Today I wish to speak about those people who we consider unlovable because they have attacked us. As we think upon this subject today, I want us to think about the world in which we live. This message really today is more for the world in which we live than it is just for us here today, though it is for us as well. This message is for a world that is torn apart by something we call retaliation. Excuse me? Yes, this world is a world that is torn apart by something we call retaliation. In Texas, when we play cards, we do play cards in Texas. And when the cards aren't coming our way, there's a favorite expression we have. We say, we can't win for losing. Such a wise expression. Well, I have one for our world today. And it's really true, because the human race is losing the game. We really are. We cannot love for hating. This is our state now in this world. And I preach the message today not just for all those who are hating around this world, but I preach it especially for the churches in this world. Because I see so many of our churches in this world that are promoting retaliation. Never should the Church of God promote retaliation. Amen. But it is going on. People are being encouraged in their churches to hate those who are different from them. They are being encouraged in their churches to hate those who have a different lifestyle than they have. They're being encouraged in their churches to hate those who do not believe what they believe. It is a sad day when that is what people see the church in the world standing for. It should not stand for that. And I hope by the end of today, when you hear the message I have to bring to you, you will not be a part of that, and you will encourage anyone you know not to be a part of that kind of retaliation that goes on. We really do live in a world where humanity has chosen to believe that the need to retaliate is greater than the need to relate. We'll say that one more time. We have chosen as a human race to believe that the need to retaliate is much greater than the need to relate. And it's a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous choice. World War I was very, very, very bad. World War II was unbelievably bad. But I tell you the truth, World War III will be beyond bad. And we stand on the brink of it today. All because people are choosing around the world, everywhere I see, to retaliate instead of to relate. So if ever there was a gospel reading we need to pay attention to today, it's the one that we have just read here this morning, in which Jesus told His disciples and all who would hear, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek to them as well. This is what the Church of Jesus Christ should stand for. And this is what every Christian person should stand for. Jesus knew that in the human life we love to retaliate. This is what humans do. He knew that about us a long time ago. It's in our nature. It is our ego to retaliate. We are the beings that believe we should give an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We are the beings who believe that self-defense is the most important thing in the world. We are the beings who believe that if we are attacked, we must attack back. It is only right. It is only reasonable. It is only the thing we must do if we want to blow ourselves to hell. So, Jesus knew this. And He tells us basically not to retaliate. When we are slapped on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. He tells us to do that. But no matter how much we might hear it, no matter how many times we might read it, the problem is this: we still want to do it. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, do we want to do it? So what are we to do? We must have a talk with our egos. We must have a talk with our human self. We must have a talk and reason as to what is the right thing to do. Back when I was in Houston, as most of you know, I supported my ministry by being a real estate broker. And I had chosen to become a buyer's broker, which is someone who represents the buyer in a real estate transaction and does his best to make sure the buyer gets the best deal the buyer can get, the most fair deal the buyer can get, and keeps the seller's agent as honest as possible. This is what I did for several years. And I helped many, many people make good investments and buy good homes, and I was proud of being able to do that. But there was one couple that came to me from Chicago. They were moving to Houston for a job. And they had heard about my services, and so they asked me to help them. And they told me that how living in Chicago, their favorite architect was Frank Lloyd Wright. And all they wanted me to do was to find a house that looked like a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Houston, Texas. Not the hotbed of organic architecture, let me tell you that. More like the mansions of the show Dallas Meet the Track Builder. That's the kind of homes we have in Houston. I took on the challenge, and we looked and looked and looked, and we had real trouble finding anything that would satisfy them. But one day they called me. They had driven by a house that was on a place that we call in in Houston, we call it Buffalo Bayou. It's a bayou that runs through the city, and it's considered to be a beautiful place because you don't fall in it, right? So the basic idea was they found this house that overlooked the Buffalo Bayou, and it reminded them of a Frank Lloyd Wright house, and they were just excited for me to come and look at it. Well, it was the ugliest house I ever saw in my life. First. And I saw so many problems with it. Unbelievable. It had this perfectly flat roof. Wonderful for the Houston rains, let me tell you. And you could even see places where it was already leaking. And it was built in such a way that it sloped down to the bayou. What a wonderful idea. Because that bayou rises most of the time. Come right into your living room if you like the bayou that much. And they had these floor-to-ceiling windows that did not allow for the soffits to be installed, so there was no air circulation in the house, and you could even see the mold growing on the wall. It didn't take much to look at the foundation and see this crack running right through it on the slope side. I had to tell them honestly, I said, this is not the house you need to buy. Really, I'm sorry. Oh, but we love this house. I said, okay. Let me go back over it one more time. Flat roof, cracked foundation, mold growing, flooding bayou. What is there to love? Oh, we love this house. Well, you can only argue so much. And when a buyer's broker finds himself in that situation, what you do next is you try to negotiate the very best price you can for them. And unfortunately, the owner thought he had the best house in the world, and he wouldn't budge one dime off of the price. I've never had a worse deal in my entire life. But they bought that house. 3 years later, they called me and asked if I would come help them sell it. Well, I explained to them I don't do that. I'm a buyer's broker. Thank goodness. And I could recommend them to some broker who might try to sell it for them. And they told me honestly, they said, we wish we would have listened to you, but we loved that house so much. You see, this is what causes us to retaliate. It's like buying a useless, ugly house that we just love so much. It's not reasonable. It's not rational. It's insane to retaliate. It is something that brings no value to us and causes us to lose unimaginable things that we would never have thought we could have lost. It only does these three things. It gives us a new enemy. It destroys our peace. And it tears to pieces our community. That's all retaliation does. And so Jesus would argue with you and me if we desire to retaliate. I would argue with you and me if we desire to retaliate. I would say to our self-centered ego, it's not worth the effort. It's not worth the price. When you really begin to analyze it, I don't care how justified it is, how right it seems, how great a thing it must be to have that revenge. No! The truth is plain and simple. As in Texas we say, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. Who's going to do that? Humanity needs to have a talk with its ego. It needs to have a talk with itself and decide this is not what we need to be doing under any circumstances. So then what are we going to do? If someone attacks us, if someone slaps us, hurts us, takes from us, does whatever it is that we might call an attack, what are we going to do and why are we going to do it? How shall we live in this world? That's the question. Well, if you are a human being, then there's nothing wrong with you retaliating. Go right ahead. Knock yourself out if that's what you still think you must do. But we are not human beings. We are what we call Christians. We are called the followers of Christ, those in whom Christ lives. It is no longer I, but Christ that lives in me. We are the new beings. We are the new ones. We got to remember that. We're not just a bunch of human beings trying to act like we're Christians. We are. That's what we believe. We are the divine ones here. We are the ones whose souls have been filled with a greater and more excellent way of life. That's who we are. And that's who we must stand up to be. And that's what I am trying to encourage you to do today. When that desire comes from your human self to be a person of retaliation, don't let that be the case. Find the divine in you. Find the Christ in you. And act out of that Christ in you. Act as Christ himself would act. Turn that other cheek and say to whoever would attack you, I stand for a higher way of life. This earth may not know it yet. This earth may not want to believe it yet. But this higher way of life is, as Paul says, the more excellent way. It's the way of love. It's the way of peace. It's the way of acceptance. It's the way of community. And if the churches of God do not stand for that, what do they stand for? This is what I have to ask. And if we as Christians do not stand for that, what do we stand for in this world that is hell-bent on destroying itself again? So, the question then becomes finding that divine in us and finding that need in us to not attack, but to show the other cheek. The question becomes, what kind of faith must we have to do that? What kind of faith must we have? Because let me tell you, retaliation takes place everywhere. It takes place between children and parents, parents and children. It takes place between fathers and sons, mothers and sons. It takes place between communities and communities, nations and nations. It takes place all over this world. You can't hardly step outside without running into retaliation, either in your own home or in your community or in your world. So what faith are you to have to turn the other cheek, just because it sounds like a good idea. Oh, I'm a Christian, so I turn the other cheek. No, there is a reason to do it. The reason is this, and it comes from your faith. And this is a checkpoint for most of us. Either you believe that person attacking you has a divine soul, or you don't believe it. And if you're a Christian, this is your belief. They have in them the potential not to attack you. They have in them the potential to live for the same peace, acceptance, and community you live for. They have that potential in them. Somebody's got to give them an opportunity to find that divine Christ in them. This is our evangelism to the world. This is why we turn the other cheek. Not because it's just a sweet idea. Because we're showing others we believe that they don't have to be that way. They don't have to attack us. They don't have to hurt us. They don't have to do that. We stand for a greater way of life, and they can have it as well. It is an action of hope. That's what it is. When you turn that other cheek, you're basically saying to the person who's attacking you, I hope that you will have in your heart the same love for peace, acceptance, and community I have. That's why you do it. That's the reason. It's your witness to the way of Christ. That's what it is. And if ever this world needed people to witness to the way of Christ as peace, acceptance, and community, now is that time before the clock runs out. Absolutely. In my ministry, I've had people turn against me. I've had people attack me. I've had people who do not like me. It's not something that's unusual in the ministry. Absolutely. If you're a pastor, you have that kind of thing happen all the time, actually. One church I served in, there was a man who acted like he really loved me. Always told me how wonderful my messages were. Always did everything he could to act like he was supporting the ideas I was trying to promote. I considered him to be one of my closest friends in that particular community. But he betrayed me. I couldn't believe it. I found out from persons in the community. That's how pastors always do. They find out from the persons in the community that this person who was acting so much like he loved me was going behind my back, telling people that I was the Antichrist, that I must be removed as a pastor as soon as possible. He was trying to get enough people to go with him to go to the bishop and ask for my removal. I did not know any of that was going on. And of course, it happened such that he could get nobody to go with him, totally alone. People considered the source. They understood that he had some kind of anger or bitterness or jealousy or whatever it was toward me. And so he soon, in frustration, left the community, resigned from everything that he was engaged in, and was gone. Now, I have to admit, honestly, it was a relief. Because my first human response was to strangle him. But the calmness of the Lord prevailed in my heart. And he left, and that was that. But you know, the Lord never makes it that easy, does he? No. A few months later, I went to the bank, and when I went into the bank, there were two lines waiting for the tellers, and I got in one line, and I was standing there waiting, and guess who got into the next line right next to me? The one who had betrayed me. Well, I looked this way, and he looked that way. But I thought to myself, you know, here you are, a preacher talking about unconditional acceptance. Here you are, a preacher talking about peace and talking about community, talking about unconditional love. What are you going to do? Look the other way for the rest of the day? No. I realized I must turn and talk to him. And so I did. And I said, hello, friend. It's been a long time since I've seen you. He was shocked that I would speak to him. Shocked. and angry that I would speak to him. And he said to me, I guess you're going to gloat because you won. And I said, no, brother, I'm not going to gloat. No matter how angry you may be at me, it's not going to keep me or God from loving you. And then he says, you hypocrite! And he stormed out of the bank. Now, I would like to tell you that there was a happy ending to that story, that he come back to the community, that he realized the error of his selfishness, but he did not. I never saw him again, and we never heard from him again. But here's the point. Here's the point I want to let you know today, that because I stood up for the unconditional love I believe in, because I stood up for the unconditional, non-retaliative love I believe in, because I stood up for that, and I said to him that I was welcoming him as a friend still, I felt an amazing peace. I felt an amazing strength of confidence in my faith. It renewed my faith in love, community, and acceptance. And I say to you today, this is the essence of why we stand and turn the other cheek to those who attack us, because it strengthens our faith in that world that is coming. Whether we kill ourselves first or not, that world is coming, and it's a world of peace, acceptance, and community. And this is the belief of we who are Christians, and this is what we stand for. This is how we stand up in this world. We are a city built on a hill, and while everybody else wants to retaliate against everybody else, while everybody else wants to slap each other on the right cheek and then gladly slap each other on the other cheek, we must stand up for peace, acceptance, and community. That's the divine in us, and that's the Christ in us. And if we ever have to stand up for anything in this world, that's what we must stand up for. And so we do. We hear the Word of God. And while the rest of the world wants to retaliate and argue on who's right, who's wrong, and who should be sent to hell or whatever, we stand up and say, no, 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 that world's dead and that world's going to die. That world is gone. A new world comes. It's the world of Christ. It's the kingdom of God. And it's a place of peace, acceptance, and community. That's what we stand up to say. And that's what the world needs to hear. Not just from ICC, but from every church in this world. They need to hear that. I want to end with a story that really touched me, and I hope it will touch you. It's a story from World War II, actually. And it's a story about one of the worst, bloodiest battles that took place in that war in the Pacific. It was called the Battle of Guadalcanal. In that battle, 7,200 American Marines were killed. 13,000 Japanese were killed. Untold numbers of assets were destroyed. And that was just one little battle on an island in the middle of nowhere. Well, in the middle of that battle comes a story that I have read about and used many times, but it's a powerful little story. It seems that there was a place called Cocumbona. It was an important place on that island that needed to be captured. And the 165th Division of the Marines were given the goal to capture that from the Marines, from the Japanese. And the Japanese were not going to let go of it at any cost. And it was one of the bloodiest times of the Battle of Guadalcanal. But after the smoke had kind of settled a little bit, there was a bomb crater. And in that bomb crater, an American Marine woke up, realized he was severely wounded, blood coming this way and that way. And just the time he woke up, on the other side of the crater was a Japanese soldier who woke up at the same time, realizing that he was severely hurt as well. And they both were terrified to see each other face to face in the smoke. And they could hear the dying crying all around them. And so their first instinct was to reach for their service revolvers. Both of them did. And both of them pointed their service revolvers at each other with shaky hands because they were barely alive. And they sat there for minutes after minutes, gun to gun, eyeball to eyeball. And then finally it dawned on both of them how stupid it is for us to shoot each other. And so slowly both of them lowered their service revolvers to the ground and dropped them, waiting for what would come. The American Marine Medical Unit arrived, started giving treatment to the American Marine that was hurt. One of the other Marines that was not part of the medical corps started to get his carbine and, as he said, send the Japanese to his ancestors. The Americans said, "No, don't do that. Give him some medical help too. Because this war is over for us." And they did. And both men survived. And after the war, the amazing thing is that both of these men came to know each other, became friends, learned how to love each other. Both of these men served on the Asian Pacific Council of Peace for several years. The American soldier was the first to pass away. The Japanese soldier came to his funeral. And he told everyone standing there about this event that I just told you about. And he said to everyone standing there, "I'm so glad we did not kill each other. For we have discovered a better way to live." And that man, this man that we bury today, is the greatest man I have ever known. I tell you that story because this is the attitude we need to have in our hearts. This war is over for us. Other people can kill each other if they want to. Other families, other people, everybody can fight, argue, get upset, rant, rave, do whatever they want to do. But this war is over for us. If we are Christians, this war is over. We have come to the realization that there is no benefit to this retaliation, fighting, arguing, hating. None, 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 none. That war is over, and we now stand for peace. Because we have fully understood what Jesus said when He said, "If someone strikes you on the other cheek, turn the other cheek as well."